Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I appreciate you taking the time to kind of hear what's been going on. So I'm going to introduce our moderator for today. Our moderator is Kyaw Moe Tun, the founder and president of Parami University, a planned residential liberal arts and sciences university based in Yangon, Burma. The Burmese military coup in February 2021 forced the leadership to remove the university outside of Burma. Currently, Parami University is licensed in Washington, D.C. as an online synchronous university awarding associate and bachelor's degrees in partnership with Bard College in New York. Kyaw Moe Tun received his BA from Bard College at Simon's Rock and PhD from Yale University. He's a threatened scholar at Bard College and the lead of the Open Society University Network's Liberal Arts and Sciences Collaborative. Please welcome Kyaw Moe Tun.
Thank you very much, Fatima. It's my honor to be moderating this very, very important conversation. Please allow me to introduce the speaker and the discussants. We've got Michael Ignatieff, educated at the University of Toronto and Harvard University. Michael is a prolific writer, a former politician, and a university professor of history at Central European University, CEU. Between 2016 and 2021, he served as the rector and president of CEU, which was forced out of Hungary by the right-wing Hungarian government under Viktor Orban. We also have Joshua Epstein, who is a third-year student at New College, a major in economics and a minor in finance. With interest in law and public service, his internship at the mayor of Miami Beach's office made him realize the importance of competency and leadership skills needed to address challenges of this global society. Now we have Fatima Ismatullah. She is a second-year pre-med student majoring in neuroscience and a triple minoring in applied mathematics, computer science, and chemistry at New College. She is passionate about the intersectionality of diversity, bioethics, research, accessibility, and treatment for those who are often misrepresented and misunderstood as patients in healthcare. She also recognizes the importance of her New College community for providing her with a diverse perspectives, intentional connections, and the lessons of what it means to be authentic to one's values. Thank you everyone for joining today's event. It's such a pleasure to welcome all of you to today. Now, I'll first start off this session with Michael. Michael, can you please tell us a bit about the background of CEU and a bit about the nature of the academic violations that happened during your presidency at CEU?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And it's great to join Fatima and Joshua. And I'm really here just to express outrage at what's happening to New College, and to express solidarity and support, and then to tell you the story of what happened to us, and then we can begin to work out whether there are connections and linkages between what's happening to New College and what happened to us in Central Europe between 2017 and 2021. What happened to us was that, for those who don't know, CEU is a graduate school in the social science and the humanities founded in 1991 by George Soros to assist Hungary and Eastern Europe to transition from communism to democracy. And he had a smart idea. He thought that if you're going to make that transition, you need free universities. He saw a connection, in other words, between free universities and democracies from the get-go. And that's why we went to Budapest. Soros is Hungarian in origin, and so it was his hometown. And we were there for 30 years. And we were never a political institution. We trained and educated something like 18,000 people from around the world, where we recruit from 120 countries. And we were proud of our academic record, as New College is proud of its academic record. And that's important because when Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, launched an attack on us in 2017, he never attacked us for failings of an academic kind or administrative or financial. And I don't think New College is being attacked for any failings either. This is just a straight-on political attack, in our case, that started in 2017. Viktor Orban suddenly introduced legislation. He had a majority in parliament. The legislation said, you can't operate in this country unless you have an agreement with us, and we're not going to give you an agreement. We then worked very hard to try and get an agreement with him somehow. We sought compromise all through. But over 2 years of negotiation and effort, we were finally had to take the decision to move the entire university across a national frontier next door to Vienna, which is where I'm talking to you from. So we had to move a university across a national frontier in the middle of the COVID pandemic, but we made it. We survived. Our story is a story of survival, and I certainly hope that New College's story will also be a story of survival. But let's be clear what's happening here. This was a straight attack on us for political reasons. Viktor Orban had to fight an election campaign in 2018, and he needed an enemy. His enemy was George Soros, the founder of the university. We were kind of taken hostage in his political battle to win an election. And I suspect that New College has been taken hostage by the Republican governor of the state of Florida to make a similar political point. And I think that's important. It's absolutely appropriate for a state, for a government to, criticize a university if it's failing academically, wasting taxpayers' money, violating academic freedom. I mean, we're not ivory towers. But when we're doing our job properly, as we were doing, and as I think New College was doing, this kind of attack on us is simply outrageous and needs to be resisted. And that's why I'm happy to be here with my two student friends, just to say, we got to fight this.
Thank you very much, Michael, for a brief explanation on what happened at CU. Now I'll turn it to Joshua and just try to understand what is actually taking place on the ground at New College.
Yeah, so we're just a small liberal arts school in Florida, for those that don't know who we are. We have about 700 students here. We're just kind of minding our own business. We were in our interim January term, which is every student gets to study whatever they choose. And this term comes around, it's the beginning of the term, and we just hear from the governor. He's announced 6 new appointments to our board, and our board consists of either 12 or 13 people. So later on, he appointed a 7th person. Now Ron DeSantis had a majority on our board. And he made clear, and his appointees made clear, that they wanted to change some academic programs. They wanted to get rid of gender studies. They wanted to get rid of what they called the DEI bureaucracy, which later down the line turned out to really be nothing. And that they really wanted to just attack the institution because they saw it as an easy target. They saw it as a political pawn, and they saw it as just a continuation of their woke going to die mentality and what Ron DeSantis has turned his political, turned who he is politically into. So I think right now, students, faculty are scared. They don't know what the next steps look like for them. I've heard a lot of students talking about transferring. There's a lot of students just like me that I'm an economics major, finance minor. I want to be a corporate lawyer and investment banker when I get out of here. So I'd really love to sit down with Ron DeSantis or any politician that says that we're this woke leftist school, because we're not. I mean, the kids here call me, I'm extremely modern. I'm extremely in the center. I'm scared because my grandfather's a Holocaust survivor. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors. This is what Hitler did. Hitler banned books. Hitler understood that if you control what people learn, then you can control what people think. And that's my greatest fear, is that we're going to have politicians not legislating to create a university that's more efficient and works better, but instead a university that teaches what they want us to be taught. So it's a tough time to be a student here. I think students here just want to go back to learning, being students rather than being political pawns and having to give interviews and having to rally to fight back against what really is just a hostile takeover of our education, of our safe space where we get to learn.
Thank you, Joshua. Just to follow up on that, I just want to specifically talk about what is being attacked here. Right now, like as far as I've read, there have been a lot of attacks on gender studies, specifically critical race theory, right, and diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. How are they going to be affecting the students' body at New College?
Is that to me still?
Yes, Joshua. Yeah.
We really don't know. And the uncertainty kind of has become killer, because it's just students are living this constant state of not knowing what tomorrow looks like for them. Tomorrow, a lot of students fear that they could find out that their favorite professors have been fired, that their subject that they were hoping to get a degree in no longer exists. So they've narrowed their attacks publicly onto gender studies and critical race theory, because they've done polling and they think that these are popular things to attack. One, they're not, but it really is. They're going, and what we expect and what trustees have said in private, or at least it's been reported, is that they really want to weed out people who don't think like them across the university, whether it's in political science, economics. It's not about certain subjects. It's about trying to get everyone to think like them. It's their march through the universities. It's them realizing that a lot of their policy stances are not popular. So them taking sort of a last stand approach to just indoctrinating, to putting preachers in the classroom rather than professionals that have been in the field for 30 years. So I don't study gender studies. I've never taken a gender studies class, but this is inevitably going to impact my political science professors and my economics professors and my finance and accounting professors, because it's just you either fall in line or you don't have a job anymore, is kind of how faculty feel. So it's scary.
Thank you, Joshua. Now, I want to point out that here it's not just about the what would be traditionally considered social science and humanities as subjects. I feel like the atmosphere at New College transcends beyond that, right? And so this question is to Fatima. What is the overall atmosphere right now among not just like humanities and social science students, but also those who are in the sciences?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I definitely think that that's an important perspective to consider, because this game of politics that are trying to control higher education, Mr. DeSantis is trying to convince that this is just a war on woke and it's just a gender studies issue, but it's really not, because what we're seeing is that this is posing Florida at a big risk of a brain drain. You have brilliantly talented professors who are they're very credible in their academic work, right? They have many publications. They have went and got their PhDs from prestigious universities. They're kind of spearheading the departments of research that they lead. And if they're not being put in an environment that welcomes tenureship, that welcomes, inclusive thoughts, where it's not them trying to shove down our throats that, we have to blame a certain population for what happened in history. No, but rather this is the perspectives that exist. These are what are relevant to this current topic of study. For example, in my Calculus 1 class last year, when we had to do a project using calculus, and we were able to find environmental factors such as climate change to kind of explain critical points, and et cetera. But yeah, just giving a bunch of perspectives and leaving it to us students to make our decision at the end of the day, but making sure that we have the facts necessary to formulate an opinion, and not just in one area or field of study, but in numerous. So when you're taking away the environment, you're taking away the capacity for professors to feel comfortable to do these very academically necessary, tasks and kind of curricula. They're going to be wanting to move to other universities. They're going to want to go to other colleges. And who does it hurt at the end of the day, it hurts us students, because professors, they have their PhDs, they have experience, they can find other institutions. But students, we put a lot of time and effort into researching, where do we want to go for our undergrad? Which programs will help us get to that next step in life, that future postgrad program, that future job? Which institution can best fit us for our post-academic goals or post-bac goals? And so when we lose, or if we're going to lose such important professors, such individuals who encourage us to think critically, then we're not going to have the tools necessary that we were promised when we dropped our enrollment deposits at this institution, or really any Florida institution that's going to be under attack because of politics. We're not given those skills that we were promised. And without the professors who can grant those type of skills, because of the diverse thinking, it leads to potential collapses of entire departments, right? So if, for example, we could have a few professors in one department and they're all planning to leave, then we don't have that department. And transferring, it's much more difficult than what Mr. DeSantis is trying to suggest. There's the rates of tuition, there's the rates of housing. There's also kind of like that transition period, because for those of us who want to go on to do postgrad programs, we'll need to establish bonds and relationships with professors in order to have good recommendation letters, research experience. So when these professors at our institution will leave, they take their research with them. And if we've been working on research projects for the last few years, and that's gone, we're going to be put at a disadvantage at other schools for those students who have already established a research relationship with those professors, but now we're trying to wiggle our way in, and we're competing against them for other postgrad programs. And not only that, but the culture as well. That's something that Mr. DeSantis is trying to kind of demonize at New College by saying that we have like a culture that doesn't encourage conservative opinions and etc. I really would like to see evidence of that, because at our institution, diversity, equity, and inclusion does not mean division. It doesn't mean a lack of. Rather, that's part of the word, inclusion. We're trying to understand the different opinions, the different perspectives, the different backgrounds that people come from, and learn how we can all accommodate to one another without taking away from each other. So if a student wants to have an opinion, how can we respectfully integrate them to make sure they're not left out, to make sure that their voices are being heard and we can best be there for one another? And so targeting this type of culture, if we were to go to other institutions, like Mr. DeSantis is saying, maybe they don't support as much inclusion. Maybe some students will be, disproportionately at a disadvantage in comparison to others. Maybe the Greek life or the sports life would be more heavily focused than academics, because at New College, we don't have a major focus on sports or Greek life. It's just studies. Like, we're a bunch of nerds. We love to study. We would love to explore. We love to learn and take on our own projects. And when you take that away, well, why did we choose New College then? And it's frustrating. Everyone's being affected because each discipline is interconnected with one another. You don't have one discipline over another. So,
thank you very much. So, because you have talked about the DEI programs, and I just want to quote something here, right? So, Christopher Rufo, who is now one of the trustees at New College, tweeted on January 4th, Governor DeSantis is going to lay siege to university diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So that was his tweet. And this question is to Fatima. As a member of the underrepresented community of students, so how is this underrepresented community of students going to respond to these upcoming changes?
Yeah, well, I'd first like to preface this by saying, my voice and my experiences is not, definitive of all underrepresented students on campus, because we have such a big variety, and I don't want to be, taken word for everyone on campus, but based on my experiences and a few students who I've spoken to, we're not going to sit down and take the victim mentality. I know that that's kind of what Mr. DeSantis wants to make us feel like, that, we're powerless. I know that Mr. Christopher Rufo, and during one of the BOT meetings, he was like, my opinion, like, unfortunately for you, does matter. Well, you know what? you can't control how we're going to continue community building, how we're going to continue empowering one another and making sure that even if it's not written in code to have diversity, equity, inclusion, we'll still enforce diversity, equity, inclusion, because that's who we are. And that's not mandated by any kind of institutional bylaws, at least, to the point of safety. So we're still going to go and have community events, such as the Holy event that will be on Saturday. We're still going to make sure that we can learn about different cultures, that will have different food events, even if they'll have to be privately funded. We'll still be there for one another and make sure that representation is met and it's not just left tokenism. Additionally, I feel like from this situation, students have become a lot more tight-knit. So when I've been speaking to some other students, they were like, well, we had to confide in one another now. We had to realize that truly those who aren't at New College, or those who don't consider themselves as involved with diversity, equity, inclusion, can understand the, concerns and struggles that we're facing with. So students have actually become a lot more united than ever before to make sure that they're heard, that they have someone to go to, that they have a community that they can belong in, because belonging is something that everyone is trying to establish in life. It's just a part of human nature. And I feel like we're just trying to learn how to navigate this together and not become divisive as, some of these politics would like to see us become.
Thank you, Fatima. Now I'll go back to Michael. Now that the students at New College have talked about how these attacks are happening, especially on gender studies, critical race theory, and diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at New College, based on your understanding, and perhaps you can share a bit about the progression of events that happen at CU as well, based on your understanding. What are the similarities and differences in terms of CU's experience and what's happening at New College?
Yeah, I think we need to move out here because what's happening at New College is outrageous, but it's part of a much, much bigger pattern. First of all, Florida. The Republican governor wants to basically change tenure rules and subject faculty to, every 5 years having your tenure renewed or reviewed. And he wants to give presidents of Florida universities the right to basically make any appointment they want, to break the faculty control over appointments. Now, nobody has a good word to say for tenure, right? But the point of tenure is to protect opinion, to protect unpopular opinion, to protect opinion that does not meet majority approval or political approval. So the attack on New College is part of a much wider Florida-wide attempt to basically rewrite the rules for a state public education system, which has a national reputation. So that's the first thing. You got to take New College and fit it in the Florida pattern. And then you've got, frankly, fit this into the pattern that this Republican governor appears to be set to run to be president of the United States. Good luck to him. He has every right to do so. But were he to be successful nationally, he will then want to make these programs go national. And so potentially this little story about New College is a huge national story about the future of higher education in the United States. And there are many governors and many educational authorities across the United States that are going after state-funded higher education and in a kind of culture war. In the name, this is a key point, in the name of academic freedom. Ron DeSantis is fighting woke in the name of academic freedom. Well, and what is particularly worrying is by aligning himself with academic freedom, he's essentially flying a false flag, because he will simply destroy the academic freedoms at New College and across the Florida academic system and rewrite the rules so that he can put into these jobs people who are more aligned with his point of view. That's not academic freedom. That's just a conservative counterattack to impose his ideology on the entire state public system in the state of Florida. And then let's widen out. Now we've gone from New College to Florida to the United States. Let's go global. And this is where the CEU story comes in, because Viktor Orban made his attack on CEU. We would not buckle. We were able, because we had the resources, to move. We're now in a situation of freedom in Austria, so we're fine. But that attack enabled Orban to position himself globally as the warrior against liberal, cosmopolitan, pro-migration, pro-gender studies, pro-racial equality, all this stuff. We have to understand the international dimensions of this is a kind of conservative counter-revolution against higher education across the world. And that's the broader context. Mr. Orban speaks at conservative party gatherings in the United States. Conservative pundits and Tucker Carlson and various people come to Budapest. We have to see that international dimension of this as being crucial to what's happening. These people don't give a damn about universities. They're after something else, which is to create wedge issues that build their brand with conservative voters. And if they smash up academic life in the process, they don't care, right? We have to understand the cynicism of this. And it seems to me, Fatima and Josh are being subjected to what can only be called vandalism. If you listen to what they've just been saying, Fatima wants to do neuroscience. Josh wants to get a degree in economics and go into finance and work in a bank. And their lives are being vandalized by this political attack. And that makes me angry as a college teacher. I don't want this to happen to any student. When I was fighting Viktor Orban, one of my chief concerns was to maintain the continuity of our educational programs so that every student could graduate, because that matters much more than anything else. And I worry that the students in New College have just had the ground cut out from under their academic futures. And that seems to me, that's why I'm calling it vandalism, because it is vandalism. And it has to be resisted. And the one thing I would really want Fatima and Joshua to talk about a bit is what can they do? They're talking about transferring, they're talking about this and that, but those are individual solutions. I mean, I do think that there are a lot of liberal arts colleges across the United States that they need to get in touch with as quickly as possible. What's terribly concerning about the New College story is that the students seem completely alone. The university has been decapitated. Their president has been fired. The trustees that were sympathetic to what the college stands for has been junked. So the students are literally leaderless. I mean, they've done a fantastic job making their case. I've seen some of the interviews they've done. They can't be faulted for that. And I praise both Josh and Fatima, but to fight this, they're going to have to get a lot of colleges like them and a lot of universities around the United States to say, this must not stand. This is ridiculous. Because Ron DeSantis wants to clobber New College so he can run for president. I mean, the cynicism is absolutely unbelievable. And it's the same cynicism I saw with Viktor Orban. Orban could care less about CEU. What he wanted was to position himself as the leader of a conservative counter-revolution in Europe. And he's been very successful at that. And we were taken hostage to serve those goals. And everybody needs to see that that's what's going on and fight it as such.
Thank you, Michael. Let me just ask a follow-up question, because you talk about the international dimension. There is the rise of authoritarianism around the world. Like, I came from Burma, and I recently witnessed it personally at a great cause to my life and everyone around me. So I do want to ask a follow-up question on, like, what do attacks on academic freedom really mean for the long-term prospects of democracy, right? Beyond the universities itself, what about the long-term prospects of democracy?
Well, if I don't want to monopolize, I want to hear more from Fatima and Josh on this one. But, I think one of the things that I think universities have done themselves some harm, to be frank, is we haven't made the case that a free academic environment in the great universities of the United States is a critical underpinning of American democracy itself. I mean, we need to step back and remember that universities are among the oldest self-governing institutions in the world. They've been, universities around before democracy. They've been around for 1,000 years. The Sorbonne and Bologna and all these universities were founded in the early Middle Ages. So these have been self-governing institutions for a very, very long time. And self-governing institutions are a critical part of democracy. Democracy is not just majority rule. It's not just, who gets the most votes. It's minority rights, checks and balances, constitutional protections, but it's also critically independent self-governing institutions, not just universities, but, the doctors have self-government, the lawyers have self-government, all kinds of institutions govern themselves. And what you see in the conservative counter-revolution everywhere is big state intervention. These people want to control everything. There used to be a conservatism, people forget this, that was small government. You want to get the government off your back. Wanted to leave institutions alone. I don't know where that conservatism has gone. What Ron DeSantis is talking about is, I want to control everything in Florida. And if you give me the chance, I want to control everything in the United States. What kind of conservatism is that? Ronald Reagan and the conservatives of the past would be scratching their heads. Orban is the same phenomenon. He wants to control everything He didn't just throw us out, by the way. He then took over all the higher education institutions in Hungary. He then, basically emasculated the Supreme Court of Hungary, seized control of the media. You have to understand what this is. The universities are part of a much wider program of just total control using state power. And that seems to me extremely un-American. If I'm a Canadian, so I got to be a little careful about giving Americans lessons in their wonderful constitutional history. But this big government authoritarianism is really weird to me, and it's toxic for free universities, and it's toxic, in my view, for democracy.
Thank you very much, Michael. I'd like to invite Fatima or Joshua if you have some comments on Michael. He has given out a very broad, a picture, right? Painted a very broad picture of the situation at hand.
Yeah, I would love to make a comment. Thank you so much, Mr. Michael, for your explanation and your discussion. I found it very enlightening and kind of a reality check for understanding that this is an American issue. This isn't just a New College issue. This isn't a Florida issue. This is an America issue. That was something that every American grew up with, and I hope still grows up to believe that we are a nation of free thinking, of freedom. Like, everything that we see is freedom to give our opinions, freedom to learn, everything embodies around freedom. And I feel like the worst thing right now is that Mr. DeSantis is, distributing over $15 million in taxpayer funds for one school that right now has about 600 to 700 students, when there are 47% of parents and 48% of rural Floridians, all Floridians, who have experienced at least some type of food insecurity issue in Florida. And so I feel like these funds, these taxpayer funds, instead of trying to control 600 to 700 people that are using thousands of people's, if not hundreds of thousands of people's taxpayer funds, to give that money back to the people that you took it from, right? To have more food security and to contribute more to educational resources, because how many schools are still waiting on textbooks, right, for students to learn? How many schools are still waiting for a proper curriculum to teach off of? And trying so hard to control what to think takes away the ability to learn how to think. That takes away the skill of problem solving in general. And that's just, I feel like, the baseline of any authoritarian regime, right? Like this idea, the hypocrisy really of saying that, you know, they're against the government, they're pro small government. But then this is a very anti-small government move to go and try to, you know, have full total control over a higher educational institution, where, you know, we're not that young to be, I guess, groomed or to be thinking a certain way, as, you know, these politicians like to use the terms of, but we're making our own free independent thought, and trying to control independent thought and free will, I feel like, is an overreach of anyone, regardless of your status of power. So if their plan is to replicate this throughout all of the entire US, well, education is the ultimate equilibrizer, sorry. It allows for, you know, those who haven't had the resources to be able to essentially catch up, even though we know there's a lot more obstacles. That doesn't make it that simple, but it still allows for, you know, those who come from different backgrounds to have some form of access to, you know, higher intellectual resources and research projects and just post-grad life. So when you're going to control what you can get out of a higher education, then you're taking away even that opportunity for those who didn't have it before to essentially catch up or to get to that point of their desirable state in life.
Thank you, Fatima. Joshua, if you have any comment, if not, I'll go to the next step.
Of
Please.
course, I'll just add one thing quickly. I think, as Michael said, this is not, it's not about any one particular subject, or it's really not about anything other than their egos, their ambitions, and they see it as an easy target, and they see it as a way to get free press. They're attacking New College and other institutions, or they're going to expand it to other institutions around the country, because they see it as a way to rile their base up. I think Republicans broadly have come to realize that a lot of their economic policies are just not popular with their base. So they've kind of had to rile them up around these fake social causes to get them to the polls. So our biggest worry here at New College, or at least my biggest worry and what I've heard from other students, is that they're going to expand their attack on New College to other universities across the country. DeSantis has presidential ambitions, and if he becomes president, what he's done to New College is going to be the model for the country. It's going to be this is what I want you to learn, and because I want you to learn it, this is what you're learning, and nothing else. And what we know is that from history, that's dangerous, but also, as Michael said, it's not good for democracy. It's not good for folks entering the workforce. We're competing with other nations that have really well-rounded education. And when we're trying to fight to come up with the best new idea, we're not going to get there by only learning one side of a political issue. If we only learn specific things that a politician wants us to learn, America's going to fall behind. Other nations will catch up to us. So I think what we've done at New College is we've come together and said, we may have been the first domino that they've attacked, but we know that we're not going to be the last. We know that they're going to expand their attacks on educational freedom. So we're launching DEFY, and this is one of the first things that we're doing as DEFY, the speaker series, trying to bring together folks that have experienced educational freedom coming under attack, so we can brainstorm ideas on how to fight back, but also just enlighten the public and enlighten ourselves. But what we'd really like to do is we'd like to build a broad coalition of alumni, faculty, parents, and students from universities across the country, so we can set up chapters in universities so that we make politicians think twice before they attack a university. So politicians know that if they attack attack educational freedom at a university, there's a group of 1,000 students waiting and ready and have the resources and the know-how to fight back. When we were attacked, the hardest part was that we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have the know-how, we didn't have the resources. And we're adamant that if we get those resources and that know-how to every university across the country, politicians will think twice. But also, if they do go ahead and attack universities, the folks at universities will have the resources and the power to be able to fight back. DEFY stands for Defending Educational Freedom for Youth. And we'd really like to have a speaker series in addition to the speaker series, have a summit in Florida where we can bring students from every Florida public university together to brainstorm ideas on what their chapters are going to look like, to fundraise. We've launched our website, we-defy.org, and we're trying to raise money to be able to build out our infrastructure of this Defending Educational Freedom for Youth organization so that other colleges have the resources to fight back, and that's so we can really take our voices and the voices of other students from across Florida that have continuously become political pawns. We can take their voices nationally so that folks know when they go out and vote for Ron DeSantis, this is what they're voting for. They're voting for they're voting for fascism. They're voting for someone who models his behavior off of Hitler. So we continuously have been asking for donations, folks to just go to we-defy.org and to launch this movement. And we think we can have a great impact registering voters to vote and getting students engaged around a cause that is personal to them, because many students really all they've experienced in their life is their education. And although a lot of students may not like school, they're in school because they understand its importance. So.
Thank you very much, Joshua. I was just going to ask you about DeFi, and you have excellently addressed my next point already. So I'm going to go back to Michael because Michael, you have now heard about how students at New College are trying to organize their direction and what they're thinking. From your personal experience, Michael, what did CEU students do that could be useful and relevant to New College students?
Well, I think everything that Josh and Fatima has said is on target. I think you want to get the message across that you've both done, I think, really well, which is say, I want to study neuroscience. I want to get a degree in finance, right? I mean, everybody can understand that. And somebody's trying to stop me do that. Keep it simple. I think that that kind of claim is very effective. In our case, we pitched this immediately as a battle for academic freedom. We didn't want to be defined as Viktor Orban versus George Soros. We wanted to simply say, we're standing for ourselves and defending a principle that is intimately connected with the very idea of democracy itself. Students at CU did an astounding job. I was the rector and, it's not really appropriate for a rector to organize, the battle, but students put out stuff on Facebook and social media, and we had, get this, 80,000 people marching across the Great Bridge in Hungary, which is the Chain Bridge, marching through the streets past our university to Parliament Square in, I think, early May 2017. And the people of Budapest were chanting in Hungarian, "Free universities for a free society." Do you know what I mean? That's the slogan, free universities for a free society. What you don't want to do is pitch this as a defense of the privileges of a little place. You've got to raise this up to an issue of principle that everybody can see. Free universities for a free society. And defend academic freedom as a defense of pluralism. Don't defend academic freedom as a defense of liberal progressive ideas, right? Because people disagree with our ideas or ideas. What they will support is the idea of a university as a free place where people can really talk and argue out a problem and find a solution, whether it's in neuroscience, whether it's in economics, whether it's in history. Free debate, free argument. That's a very American virtue, but it has been pummeled by these ideologists from the right, and sometimes, let's be honest, from some ideologists of the left. And universities have got to grab their own freedom back from all this political partisanship and say, we're here for free inquiry. We're here to give kids great degrees in neuroscience and economics and social science and treat and teach them to be free citizens. And if you pitch it there, you can win. I was amazed at the support that we had in Budapest. Viktor Orban did not speak for Hungary. There were hundreds of thousands of people who supported us. We just couldn't. The problem is that, he's the law. So if he makes a law, I'm not in a position to defy the law. So they changed the law. We had to leave. But I'm not pessimistic about the ways in which academic freedom can be a popular cause if you pitch it as a defense of basic democratic freedoms that everybody can identify with. And when I sense listening to Fatima and Joshua, it's clear that they get this. They don't need any lessons from me. All I want to do as a ex-rector of a university that got whacked over the head the way New College has been whacked over the head. I'm with you 100%. And I think it's important for you not to feel alone, for you not to feel kind of, with a wagon circle around. And, the thing to do is break out of that and reach out across the United States and build, as Joshua said, coalitions. Keep this thing going because you're not alone. There are, a lot of Americans and a lot of people internationally like me who understand what's being done to you and understand how wrong it is and want to support you any way they can.
Thank you very much, Michael. So I do want to, point out and quote here the new trustee, Rufo, said, if we can take this high risk, high reward gambit and turn it into a victory, we're going to see conservative state legislators start to reconquer public institutions all over the United States. Now, I'm going to pose this question to Fatima. What are the potential repercussions on other public colleges and universities, particularly right now in Florida? And what is your sense on that?
Yeah, I think this goes back to what I was saying earlier. I really fear that there's going to be a great brain drain, I know that there's been a push, like, for example, the Max Planck Florida Institute for Neuroscience, the whole agreement with the former governor before Mr. DeSantis was to make Florida more than just a tourist state, to make Florida a home for academic inquiry, for discoveries in science, to be kind of like a new research gate in the United States. And so if you're going to be taking away, well, not you, but if politicians are going to be taking away this sense of safety and a safety net for both professors and students to be able to study what they came to study for and to feel empowered in their education, to take on independent study projects without so much governmental control, they're going to find an institution that will, and if Mr. DeSantis is trying to do what he did at New College to every other college in Florida, well, Florida isn't going to become that new research gate as originally, intended. Students might go to other states like in the Northeast or even on the West Coast and try to find institutions that will support them with state governments that will allow them to go and, have no limits to their sense of learning. And it's just like what Mr. Michael had said, when students are able to go and learn what, kind of what they came to, it doesn't mean that having a different opinion is not going to provoke, some sense of positive debate. It means like we could have different opinions and continue discussions. No one's going to go and attack another student and say, well, we're going to oust you because you think differently. We're going to kick you out of the college if you have a different opinion, or because you think differently politically, academically, you're not welcomed here. No, it is a place that's supposed to be free from governmental control, to have that kind of self-governance for each institution, to allow for academic inquiry, because inquiry comes from doubts. Inquiry comes from thinking for oneself and considering all of the possible resources before they formulate a conclusion. So if you take away the essence of thinking, students are going to go, and because they're high thinkers, find a place that will give them those resources. And I'm just afraid of what's going to be left in Florida. I first really wanted to make sure that my future generations can be able to grow up and take a lot of empowerment from these institutions like, UF, FSU, New College, USF, all of these great institutions. They each have something unique to offer. But again, if Mr. DeSantis is going to make the conditions unfavorable for both students and faculty, well, Florida is not going to be the place to invest in one's higher academic goals and achievements.
Thank you very much. I'll ask a very open-ended question to all three of you. Given the fact that this is not an isolated case, but it could become, be going beyond Florida and throughout the United States. And to me, it just underscores the importance of not taking academic freedom that you have for granted, right? And how do we protect and enshrine academic freedom throughout other colleges, universities, throughout the United States? And so what would Michael, and again, like Fatima, Joshua, anyone could respond to this, how would we ensure that academic freedom is respected and boosted up even more than ever now in other colleges and universities throughout the US?
Boy, you don't ask easy questions, do you? Look, we have to understand what academic freedom is, first of all. I mean, academic freedom is two things. It's the freedom of individual researchers to research the subjects they want, and it's the freedom to teach what they want. But it's not an unlimited freedom. I mean, every time a researcher publishes an article, it has to be reviewed, it has to be checked. You don't get to say anything you want in academic life, and you don't get to say anything you like in a classroom. These things are disciplined by academic disciplines. It's precisely learning that academic freedom depends on respect for academic standards of truth and evidence. That's the core of academic freedom. The second piece of academic freedom is institutional autonomy and independence. The taxpayers do pay for public education at New College and at Florida institutions. But the deal is that universities should be free to set their own academic priorities. What Ron DeSantis is saying is, I'm going to decide who should be a professor in Florida. I'm going to appoint trustees who I like, and they're going to appoint who they want. And as Fatima crucially said, this is a recipe for mediocrity. It's a recipe for brain drain. It's a recipe for people getting the hell out and going to a state where they can do their work in peace and bringing bright students like Fatima and Josh with them. It's not a recipe for success. You see that, and let's also understand finally, one of the reasons that this is such a hot subject, why suddenly universities are, a burning issue of controversy everywhere in the world. Why? Because they're so important. The knowledge that drives the modern economy comes out of university research labs and seminars. We're knowledge societies, and therefore, he who controls knowledge has power. Knowledge is power, and he who controls knowledge has power. People like Ron DeSantis are shrewd. They know how central and how important universities are for the whole future of the economy of Florida, for the economy of the United States, and for Europe. And so this is going to be a battle in the future. Universities have to get up and say, if you want world-class, excellent universities, you have to let us do what we've done for 1,000 years, which is pick the ideas that are worth exploring, discard the ones that aren't, train people in the disciplines of thought, and allow us to make those choices. And these politicians all over the world, Orban and Sanders, are saying, aha, the universities matter, so I want to control it. If you control it, you'll kill it. It's a guarantee that you'll have mediocre, second-rate institutions that no one is going to want to attend. And all bright students like Fatima and Josh are going to get the hell out of places where they're being sat on and go to places where they're free. You know, so it's not going to work, is my point. We shouldn't be discouraged because they're adopting a strategy that, in my view, is going to fail. And we need to stand up and fight it because we love universities. I love universities. I think Fatima and Josh clearly love New College and value what it's done for them. And they're fighting to save it. And we all need to support that.
Thank you, Michael. Joshua and Fatima, open up to you.
Sorry, could you repeat that question one more time?
Oh yeah, so as I was mentioning, you know, the attack on New College is not going to be an isolated case. It's just gonna be you know, going beyond that, and then as it has been stated, to reconquer public institutions all over the United States, right? So it really underscores the importance of academic freedom that is being now enjoyed in other institutions. And I hope that students at New College will become exemplars of that, you know, the guardians of academic freedom on determining what it is that you are the ones, you know, to define what you want to learn, what you want to achieve, and defining your own goals. And so with that, yeah, I just want to open up to both Fatima and Joshua on sharing a bit about, you know, how important it is that students in other colleges and universities need to step up as well, not take it as granted, you know, really step up and make sure that academic freedom is respected, enshrined,
Yeah,
and what they can do.
So I think first and foremost, most important thing is to really be active in the voting systems and elections. Research the candidates who are up running for any election on a local level, on a region level, on a state level, all the different levels. They each matter because, you know, there's a chain of authority. Making sure one becomes educated, they educate their community, their friends, realize how important the future of their freedoms are at stake. And outside of that, you know, outreach, making sure everyone is aware, but aside from voting goals, making sure that professors feel supported, that students feel supported, because if everyone is really busy giving, but no one feels reconnected as a community, that community will fall apart. They'll burn out, they'll feel drained. So making sure that we check in on one another and have events that can also make sure that we feel, you know, refueled and replenished to keep going in this fight, because it's going to be a long fight. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And aside from community check-ins, you know, right now, if we can't control the law, like in an instant, even though many people wish, laws do not prohibit what one's mind has access to, right? So we still have Google, we still have other like ResearchGates, maybe databases that we can look into. If students really feel like a lot of things are out of control, but they still want to learn, then maybe even form social groups, right? They can meet in their dorms, they can meet outside in cafes and libraries and get together to teach one another on these important topics that are being censored in schools, to make sure that education does not stop at the hands of government, and that if the government wants to take that away from us, well, let's take the autonomy back. Let's take our education back in our own hands and ensure that the flaws and faulty of a government will not affect our upcoming generations who's worked so hard to try to make sure we could right the wrongs of the past. You know, this is something, a torch that we're carrying on to the next generation to say, hey, we did something about this. We didn't sit down and become the victims. We tried our best to become the fighters in the most, you know, effective way possible with the least amount of harm done, but the greatest strategies in mind. So I would just encourage students, anyone who's listening, who's paying attention to what's happening at New College, go out and vote, research who you're voting, reach out to your community, stay in touch with your communities, and keep educating yourself. Do not let these situations deter you from your goals, and make sure that, you know, I know how hectic all of these experiences are. They can really be unmotivating for some students, you know, to just return back to that studious mindset, to go back in their dorm, open their computer, when all of these anxious thoughts are running through their brain. It's like a quote or a paraphrase from Michelle Obama's book, The Light We Carry. I really enjoyed it a lot. Don't let this be a trap that prevents you from completing your higher education, from getting to your goals. Get to that higher position of power where you can do more. Let this be fuel for you to keep going even stronger, even harder, and to not let such a movement die out.
Thank you, Fatima. I'll give the floor to Joshua just to speak and just a last message that you can about this topic. Joshua?
Yeah. So when I first heard that we had come under attack, I was worried. I was sad. What I've seen in the past 2 months is that really, so we're more resilient than we think we are. That as soon as I found out that we were not alone, that we had the support of alumni, a support of people across the country, I realized that we were, one, really in for a fight, but two, this is a fight that we're going to win. And I think that this is why I've been so passionate about trying to get the message about DEFY out there. Is I think that once we starting this chapter system, starting the system where we can get kids and students involved at every university to understand the value of their academic freedom, I think we can really preempt attacks. I've never thought, before this, I never thought of my academic freedom, the ability to learn what I wanted, as anything special. I thought it's just something that's just how the world worked. But talking to my grandfather, I mean, talking to my grandfather. He grew up in a forced labor camp and had his bar mitzvah in a displaced persons camp, because Hitler was able to control what people learned and then was able to just eradicate whoever he wanted because people stopped caring. So I think we're going to get people to care. We're going to branch out. We're going to create a national organization. We're going to ensure that students know they're not alone, give them the resources to fight back, protect faculty tenure, and take our message out into the public. DeSantis has a lot of money behind him. I think with a lot of money behind us, we'll win, and our message is powerful, and we'll strike back. And I think he'll be sorry that he picked on us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Freedom is not free, and we have to keep our guards up. So now we are at the end of the session, and I'd like to thank the speakers and the discussants, Michael Ignatieff, Fatima Matula, and Joshua Epstein for joining this session. Thank you very much for your contribution. I'd also like to thank the sponsoring institutions, the DEFY, of course, and the CEU Democracy Institute, and Open Society University Network, Liberal Arts and Sciences Collaborative, which literally was set up to study these types of themes about the liberal arts and sciences, education, free inquiry, critical thinking, academic freedom, all of this. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone, and everyone as well joining and watching this live stream. Thank you very much for joining the session.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.